healthcare data breach statistics out there. Something interesting found. The HIPAA Journal has compiled healthcare data breach statistics from October of 2009, when the Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights started to publish these summary healthcare data breaches on its website. You can find that at HIPAAjournal.com. Once again, that's HIPAAjournal.com. And I think of old computers. I'm thinking of firewalls that aren't updated. I'm thinking of outdated systems. And as pharmacy owners, as people that are running businesses, the worst data breach of all time is ranked as number one. Everybody remembers this. You may have been affected to this as you're listening, but it was Change Healthcare in 2024, and it affected 190 million people. What there's only 330 million people in the country, so that's a lot of people. When we are excited to talk with experts in our space that can bring us information, that can bring you, pharmacy owners that are listening right now, pharmacists that are listening, information that's going to help you be in a better operation, stay in business longer, avoid HIPAA issues or fines for that matter. This is important. Today's episode, Patch Now or Pay Later, IT Security Essentials for Pharmacies. And this is coming up on Pharmacy Podcast Tech Trends. Don't miss it. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
We are committed to the pharmacy owner's success. PrimeRx believes in empowering pharmacies with innovative solutions to thrive in today's competitive landscape. We look forward to working with pharmacy owners and sharing how our solutions can contribute to their sustained profitability and growth. Connect with us on the web by going to PrimeRx.io. That's PrimeRx.io.
All right, we are here with Darrell Hyde, the Chief Technology Officer of PrimeRx. Darrell, it's so good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so let's talk about prescribing knowledge, dispensing wisdom, and that is, let's explore the critical topic that so many pharmacies seem to sweep under the rug because, listen, they are busy. They have employees to take care of. They have the overhead of their wholesaler situations. They have changing regulations happening. They have maybe something's happening in their community that's this very disruptive. Whatever it is, when you think of IT and security, when you think of infrastructure, what we call infrastructure hygiene, it's just something sometimes that just gets swept under the rug from an operational perspective. Come out and just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your role at PrimeRx as the CTO, and kind of how some of these issues keep you up at night for your own the clients and pharmacies that you're serving.
Sure. Well, thank you. So I've been working in and around tech, and in particular around infrastructure and infrastructure security for about 20 years. And, but my role with the organization is oversight of engineering. So I have the privilege of leading our software, data, platform, and security engineering teams across the organization. But, as much as that's a role with a lot of kind of deep technology roots in it, with a lot of kind of, deep technology initiatives there, the basics are what pharmacies really need to cover. And the thing that I see more often than not are just simple blocking and tackling of mistakes being made that cause pharmacies to put their businesses at risk. And I'll back that with a story. So for context, I joined the organization about 2.5 years ago, a little just over that. And about 2 months in, I was on a call with a customer. I love talking to customers. something that is, just kind of, hopefully you'll realize about me just sort of organically, but something that is a fact is I love talking to customers, hearing about what's going well, and candidly hearing about what's not going so well, because that's when you learn something. And we're talking to a customer who had just experienced a ransomware attack. And I'd love to tell you that was the last time I heard of it, but it happens to our customers every few months. It happens pretty regularly. And this customer in particular had not invested in any kind of backups and had just lost 15 years of his pharmacy data, just gone. Not in a position to pay the ransom that was being asked for it. Didn't have was not in a position to do that. Wouldn't have been an option. And even doing so in some cases can be a pretty sketchy proposition, regardless. But you hear this person on the other side of the phone, on the other side of the call, who has effectively just lost their business. A patient is going to walk in tomorrow and they will have no idea what they're prescribed, no idea when their refills are due, no idea what insurance they had on file, and they're basically just having to start their business from scratch. That's just a crushing blow to small business owners, as you just stated, who already have regulatory pressures to deal with, already have wholesalers that they have to deal with, have real healthcare problems they have to deal with. IT shouldn't be one of them. One of the things that I hear regularly is that our stores don't have mature IT staff. That's very, very common. You're talking about, in many cases, a pharmacy that is owned and operated by a head pharmacist with maybe 2 or 3 employees. They obviously don't employ a large IT team. But the good news is that there are some very basic blocking and tackling things they can do to protect themselves and to protect their data and to protect their customers, and candidly to protect their business. And all those things really kind of go in hand. You're protecting your business is in many cases non-different from protecting your patients and your patients' data privacy. And those 3 things can't really exist in a vacuum. You're effectively doing all of those by following some of the pretty basic blocking and tackling steps there. Things very simple, such as running some type of antivirus or anti-malware system, running a supported version of your operating system, running a supported version of your operating system, and applying updates to it as they are due. Even just those two steps right there. Running a supported version of your operating system, ensuring that you're not running a version of Windows that is end of support, and running an antivirus system that is licensed and receiving updates on a regular basis. And there's a number of good ones out there that are affordable for small businesses and work really, really well. Simply taking those 2 steps can do a tremendous amount to level up your overall security posture in your pharmacy.
So share with us, Darrell, what are the common weak spots in our independent community pharmacies out there that they're just not watching? And when you start taking an audit or evaluation, you realize that there's some holes out there that are security sensitive.
So obviously the 2 that I just mentioned are first and foremost, are always going to be the top 2. Having said that, there are other very, very common gaps that pharmacies can look to fill. One of those would be remote access software. People are using all kinds of remote access software to manage their pharmacies remotely. You really need to scrutinize what you're running, ensure that it's a platform that is receiving regular security updates, that leverages multi-factor authentication, and that you're using a strong password and a strong second factor authentication to access that, and that you're keeping access to that limited in most cases, I mentioned kind of the makeup of our pharmacies, really just the owner, or at least constrained to key staff. Remote access can be very, very helpful if you need to operate multiple pharmacies remotely or things like this. But if you're not locking down that access, you're just asking to have some type of a security incident. Equal to that is kind of planning for disaster. In many cases, as I said early on, we see pharmacies going through security incidents, going through some kind of a security incident every couple months, and it probably happens more frequently than that. Those are just the ones that we hear about, directly from a customer who's having a challenge. And we're hearing about those things on a regular basis, and to the point where pharmacies need to stop thinking about if this happens and start thinking about when this happens and how they're going to recover from that. And so this is where improving your security posture really is kind of on par with improving your disaster preparedness posture. Something quite as simple as having offline backups, having backups that are not in your pharmacy, having backups that are disconnected from your pharmacy, that you can recover from in the event that you experience some type of a security incident. One of the things that has become a very, very, very common pattern with ransomware infections over the last couple of years is they are intelligent enough, the threat actors are intelligent enough to look for your backups. So if you have backups in, let's say, an external hard drive that's still attached to the server that's been compromised, they're going to look for that. They're going to either erase that or encrypt that storage, thereby choking off your ability to recover from that disaster. This is why disconnected backups that aren't directly connected to your pharmacy or are outside of the four walls of your pharmacy, are so important. There are any number of ways to do this. Native in our software is the ability to take backups and put them on removable storage and take them outside of your pharmacy. If that's something that you want to handle kind of operationally yourself, stores can do that in an entirely self-service capacity. We also offer a product called Cloud Backup that actually takes a snapshot of your pharmacy on a nightly basis and pushes it to an external cloud storage. This is a really attractive offer for pharmacies because it means that because it takes all of the operational overhead out of managing backups out of their hands, and it makes recovering from some kind of a disaster something that we do as part of the service. So if they're utilizing this cloud-based backup service from us, in the event that they experience a ransomware attack, a security incident, or candidly a regular disaster, a flood or something else that impacts the hardware running in the four walls of the pharmacy, we can recover their data directly from the cloud without them having to take any action on their own. Give us a place to recover it to, and we deliver that as part of the service. It's a relatively inexpensive product. It's maybe $50 a month for pharmacies to run. And the assurance that you get from that, both from a disaster preparedness perspective and from a security incident recoverability perspective, is incredibly important. So I think those are in addition to kind of the top two that I mentioned, just running a supported version of your operating system and applying updates, running an anti-malware program and applying updates to it on a regular basis, scrutinizing your remote access and ensuring that you've really thought through your disaster preparedness, your BCDR strategy, really, would round out just those four items alone would dramatically level up the way that most pharmacies are operating.
Darrell, how often should we be thinking about this stuff? So I'm a pharmacy owner. I want to make sure that I'm staying compliant. How often should we be looking at our security, at our IT, at our firewalls, at our software, at our, how often do you suggest that a pharmacy looks at this?
So I'll give you a little more practical kind of answer to that, because obviously, as a security professional, I think it's something you should be looking at constantly. But I also recognize that operating IT infrastructure isn't something that somebody opened a pharmacy to be able to do. So a better way to think about that, realistically, you can do evaluations of these things on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis. There are external parties will come and kind of do an annual assessment for you. But most importantly, these are kind of things that you can generally set and forget and audit. So you can set automatic updates to run on your servers and such at scheduled times. You can set your antivirus software to update and keep running at certain times. You can set up your backups to be scheduled and run. And so these things shouldn't require constant inspection. The piece that you really need to look at is some type of regular audit of these things. And the easiest way to look at that are going to be the end of life dates for a lot of the software you're running. That's where a lot of pharmacies, that at least that I talk with, run into gaps there. I didn't realize that Windows, that Windows 7 or Windows XP is no longer supported. Well, of course it isn't. But if you watch the end of life dates for the software that you're running and simply plan for that, drop it on a calendar and manage to it, with appropriate preparation. And that can involve bringing in a qualified professional to kind of establish, some of the initial practices for you. But with appropriate preparation, it doesn't require constant monitoring. And I think that's the really important message, that if you set the appropriate foundation, then it's not something you need to be looking at daily or even monthly, so long as you understand, hey, I'm running this version of Windows, and I know that it is going to be supported for further 3 years. I have a pretty good runway there. Or I'm running this version of Windows, and I know it's going end of life later this year. I need to plan for that. And keeping those things, keeping that front of mind becomes very, very important.
So I like the pharmacy owners out there who are creative, and they know that they cannot wear 500 hats, when they have a staff that's going to back them up, and they need to delegate. So I think of the creative mind share of many of my friends who own pharmacies, and I love how some of the positions and some of the responsibilities that they've given to their staff, that they've given to their technicians, that they've given to maybe this administrative person, actually is good for the relationship between them as an employee and the employee, employer-employee. And it almost, feels like another part of their position. So delegating and saying, okay, which of my technicians or which of my staff are the most IT enabled, or they like technology, or they like the thought of it, and you start asking questions maybe during a team meeting, and then you get 3 or 4 of them that raise their hand, and then you assess out of the 3 techs that have raised their hand, which one are you going to pick? Or maybe it's a rotation that now this person is in charge of our overview of our security protocol, and you check every workstation, and you check the admin center of maybe your Microsoft environment or whatever. But then you double check that back to the PrimeRx support team to say, what other things can we be doing to assure that our pharmacy is in a less risky place
Sure.
when it comes to ransomware or when it comes to being broken into. Talk to us about the training the staff and the basic hygiene of our frontline users.
Sure. So so first of all, the notion of kind of delegating responsibility to folks in your staff for maintaining these things is a really good recommendation. It shouldn't necessarily always fall to your pharmacy owner, and it can't be everybody's job, because once it's everybody's job, it's really nobody's job. But the good news is these things are relatively straightforward concepts. Most of us are using either Windows or Mac OS on a day-to-day basis. Most of us are familiar with applying security updates to it. Most of us do that on a regular basis. You're simply doing this in the pharmacy. The best way that you can do that, obviously in your pharmacy is scheduling kind of maintenance windows to do that work. You obviously don't want to apply those patches in the middle of the day because obviously that's the sort of brains of your operation. But having kind of a scheduled night for updates once a month generally works really well. It keeps the focus on making sure that this work gets done, and you have your kind of internal sign off that these things are occurring. The amount of training that's required is fairly low. These things are meant to be consumer self-service. And Microsoft's done a really good job with this. Some of your top kind of antivirus providers, folks like Bitdefender or Norton or McAfee or Malwarebytes, have all done a pretty good job packaging these things in such a way that they're easily maintainable by somebody whose first job is not running IT infrastructure. There is another direction to go, though. In addition to being prepared for these kinds of things, the other thing to do, the other alternative that pharmacies have, is to actually leverage a pharmacy management system that doesn't necessarily require them to run IT infrastructure in the pharmacy. And this is something that we've been enabling customers on for ever since we launched PrimeRx Cloud last summer. This is a multi-tenant software as a service product. It's a fully functional pharmacy management system that takes all of the IT, security, compliance, and operational burden off of the pharmacy. All they're responsible for is accessing the system in a browser. data security, data protection, backups, all of that, including the underlying kind of security of the infrastructure, backed up by our SOC 2 certification, is entirely shouldered by our team. So there are a couple of different ways to think about this. You can look at how I'm going to prepare my staff, I'm going to train them, delegate, but there's also the opportunity to completely alleviate those burdens and adopt a product that has a very different sort of shared responsibility model, shared risk model, in that we take on the responsibility of keeping platforms secure, keeping platforms updated, having constant 24/7 eyes on glass with the security operations center. These are all the things that we build into the platform for our customers. They don't even have to think about it.
That's a really good point, to have a system that is run for you, that is on top of the infrastructure behind the scenes in the cloud. That way, now your data is definitely backed up, all of the patient information. But then I think of if there is intrusion, your organization probably is spotting that and being able to say, "Hey, there's something up, so we're going to disconnect or have a level of pause so we can assess what's really going on." Talk to us about some of the tools over the years of your experience that you've used, backup, things like patch management, network monitoring. But talk to us about some of the other tools that you've shared with other pharmacy owners over the years that have been really successful.
That's a really good question. So when we're talking about things like patch management, there are, realistically, those things are really built into the operating system there. Those aren't things that require a whole lot of extra tooling to do, or a whole lot of extra investment. When it comes to when it comes to network security, for example, these are the kind of things that you can build a relatively secure network in the pharmacy without a lot of advanced tooling. So one of the things that we recommend is a very simple, using most pharmacies are using typical kind of commodity broadband. Where you're using private IP addressing inside the pharmacy, one public IP address for outgoing connectivity. Right away, you're creating a perimeter of security there. You're already creating a perimeter of security. Most of your kind of router platforms and firewall platforms have some kind of firewall or firewall filtering feature set. SonicWall offers this built into their platform, so they can scan outbound traffic to alert you in the event of some compromised system appearing on your network, things like this. But realistically, just keeping an eye on the basics becomes that much more important. It's very, very easy to get overwhelmed with what tools you're going to use out there. And you very quickly find yourself, where you're spending more time operating IT infrastructure than you are anything else. So while yes, there are good tools out there for patch management, most of the pharmacies that we talk to are running relatively small footprints, 2-3 workstations, one server. Spending a lot of time trying to build, trying to adopt tooling to automate that is almost going to put the pharmacy in the seat of being more of an IT operator that they want to be. Simply keeping these systems current directly through the self-service tools that are provided by the vendor, honestly, is the most straightforward way to do that. On our side, in our cloud platform, on the other hand, we leverage tooling like Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Sentinel, along with a 24/7 security operations center that's doing constant traffic inspection and incident analysis and incident escalation. That's what's built into built into the infrastructure running our cloud product, so that we know that at all times that any type of security intrusion is being analyzed, being detected, being remediated as quickly as possible, but also ensuring that you've got not only kind of like artificial intelligence in analyzing some of these things, but also kind of human in the loop to ensure that the appropriate conclusion is come to on a relatively quick basis. So honestly, I recognize this may not be this may not be the answer you're looking for there. I would not recommend a pharmacy go too far down the route of buying IT tooling to manage servers. I would much rather see them just invest in the basics, run a supported operating system, keep it updated with patches, schedule your automatic updates for a time, ensure that there's a night monthly where that's occurring. Do the same thing with your antivirus. Even just doing that is going to do it. Take you up a significant level. As soon as you start introducing another layer of abstraction, another set of tools to manage these things, you're investing time in managing that. And managing IT infrastructure isn't what pharmacies are there to do. It's not what pharmacists are there to do. So honestly, I would tend to recommend them to stay away from some of the common like patch management or network monitoring tooling, because that's not really what their businesses operate for. Mind the basics. Run a supported operating system. Run patches. Run a good anti-malware program. Keep that current. You have to. There are subscriptions you have to buy there. Scrutinize your remote access products, and then really think through your disaster preparedness strategy. You can focus on those 4 things. You are already leveling up your game significantly compared to what we've seen across our customer base.
Malware. Let's talk about that. Do you have any suggestions for the listeners of a malware subscription that you're like, wow, this is a really good, high quality product?
Sure. There are actually there's a couple that I'm a big fan of. One is, again, kind of coming back to my original message around native tooling. Microsoft Defender, the Microsoft Defender suite is very, very good. Microsoft has invested tremendously in the Defender suite and making that and really making that an enterprise grade security platform that's natively in your operating system. They've done a really nice job with it. It works really well. It can be a little cumbersome to configure. It is not the most intuitive thing in the world to configure, but it's also very, very cost effective. But if you look at just some of like the better tooling that's out there, some of the names are going to be very, very common. Norton has been in this space for decades. McAfee has been in this space for decades. Bitdefender is not decades old, but not exactly a new entrant to this space either. Those 3 I would put really at the top of any list, both from kind of an ease of operation perspective, but also a kind of a breadth of protection perspective. Anti-malware platforms have really gone away from just being, because we were used to the phrase antivirus, which was something that you heard a lot in the 90s and early 2000s, and that's kind of become anti-malware, recognizing that the breadth of security threats that these platforms can protect you from are continually increasing. So that becomes very, very important. The other side of that too is thinking about where you're managing electronic communications. Lots of pharmacies are running kind of personal email through Gmail or through Yahoo, and I know that because that's how we communicate with a lot of them. There are native some native tools built in there, but honestly, I would strongly recommend any pharmacy to invest in a 365 subscription and to use the Defender for 365, Microsoft Defender for 365 suite. It's not incredibly expensive. The licenses per seat are not incredibly expensive, and one of the things that you get out of the box there is protection from phishing attacks and alerts around phishing attacks and kind of the automatic mitigation of some of those things. That becomes incredibly important. One of the things we see very commonly is that credential compromises are a huge vector for not just pharmacies, but for any type of kind of initiating event in a security incident. And so one of the things that we always recommend is for pharmacies to have some type of anti-phishing software out there. Defender for 365 protects you very well from something that might otherwise be tricking you to enter credentials into a platform that's there to harvest them or meant to imitate your Gmail account or some other account that you might enter trusted credentials into. I like I tripped over some words there.
Oh, that's all right. Darrell, is the age of our infrastructure, of our computers, of our server, is there any relevance to that where you'd say, hey, start looking at a 3-year machine or a 4-year machine as something that may become a security threat in and of itself because of the age of the system, or is it more about the software that's running on those machines? Like, talk to our listeners about the actual infrastructure, the technology.
So everything comes back to the supported dates and supported lifespan for a given piece of software. The biggest problem you're going to run into with dated hardware is compatibility with newer software and performance, which is which is a problem that we see pharmacies running into, where they've let's say even if they have upgraded the operating system a couple of times to stay current, they're running hardware that's significantly underpowered for the workload they're dealing with, and that becomes frustrating to staff and frustrating to patients. But really, when you're talking about age of infrastructure in general, that's going to be more of that's going to come back to performance and reliability and failures and things like this. Really, the piece that I want folks to focus on is the supported dates for your software. How long is that software supported? How long does the vendor offer security updates for it? That's really the number you want to be looking at. The age of the hardware, keeping your hardware current to support the evolving and hopefully growing workload in your pharmacy becomes important to just maintaining stable business operations. But older hardware isn't necessarily more susceptible to any security incident than newer. Really comes down to, in most cases, what is the age of the software that's running there? Is it a version of the operating system or a piece of software that is presently supported by the vendor, or is it not? And that's really the piece that we again, kind of coming back to your four kind of areas of investment. Run software that is supported, ensure that you're scheduling automatic updates on it. Run anti-malware software, ensure that you're keeping that current. Scrutinize your remote access solutions, ensure that you're keeping them constrained, that you're using multi-factor authentication there. And then, of course, ensure that you are preparing, you have a disaster preparedness or a disaster recovery plan. Those four things are going to, you check those four boxes in a substantial way, you're going to level up your game significantly. Keeping hardware current is going to help you run a business efficiently. It's not necessarily going to keep you secure.
Darrell, this has been a very valuable conversation. I want to shout out to our listeners. If you're curious, if you run a pharmacy, you are a pharmacy owner, multiple locations, one location, it doesn't matter, and you're just curious, you just want to take just a little bit of a test, a time to check up on your own systems, reach out to PrimeRx.io. Once again, go to the website PrimeRx.io. And actually there's several sections on the site that give you kind of the breakdown of the services they're offering, but the remote backup service, the RBS, the information to constantly make sure that your systems are backed up just in case there was an attack or ransomware or something happened to your systems on premise that you just lost access, or maybe there was a virus in place. Once again, this is the PrimeRx team that is ready to go. They understand pharmacy. They understand pharmacy technology. Darrell's available. Reach out to him, obviously, on LinkedIn as well. But Darrell, thank you so much for being available to us today on this discussion. This is an overlooked discussion. This is an overlooked topic that many of our pharmacy owners just aren't thinking enough about. So thank you so much for this. You are listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Tech Trends, sponsored by PrimeRx. And once again, take a look at PrimeRx.io and ask for their assistance in just assessing your pharmacy systems, your pharmacy infrastructure, and just reach out and ask lots of questions. We ask you to reach out to us as well if there's anything else that we can do for you. Any question whatsoever about the business of pharmacy, we're ready to help you with. And we thank you so much for listening to this PrimeRx Pharmacy Podcast Tech Trends, and we'll talk with you next time. Thanks for listening.